I do want to break down a little bit more about what to expect, what's happened so far, and what happens next. Let's bring in Casey Myers, friend of the show, professor and director of graduate studies at the School of Communications there at Virginia Tech. As always, Casey, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to break it all down.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so first off, the big question here, where do we stand? We just heard that interview there, that report from Chad Pergram at Fox News, who broke down a little bit about what happened on Friday. But for folks out there, can you explain where things do stand now?
Right. Well, from all evidence, it seems that there is a stalemate and that there is no resolution in sight. The Senate needs 60 votes to pass this continuing resolution, and it seems that the Democrats have dug in on this issue, largely around health care and health care premiums on Obamacare. So one of the things that I would expect to see are more discussions, but really the underlying issue here is a political one that neither party seems to be willing to budge on. And when you have this issue with a continuing resolution that's already been passed in the House being in recess means that the Senate has to have this version passed or there'll be no progress going forward.
When we discuss all of this, what would you say is the main really holdup that is preventing a deal? You touched on this, but what is that main holdup between the two parties?
Well, there's the official holdup, which is this issue about healthcare premiums that are going to be resetting in January, and that they are going to affect those who are using Obamacare as a health insurance, and that is a real political issue. It's a political issue also for Republicans, who many of their constituents live that were in their districts or states are affected by this. But the continuing resolution is this stopgap measure to fund the government temporarily, and it is separate from the healthcare issue. Now, the politics of all this is also at play, as it was mentioned earlier, where Chuck Schumer, who has been criticized earlier by not being tough enough on the Trump administration and holding Republicans accountable, has gone along with the shutdown and has implemented that on this issue. And I think that there's political kind of maneuvering there as well. And I think that when you're looking at it long term, Democrats are ultimately looking at the 2026 midterms and thinking, well, we may have some criticism on the shutdown, but if we're able to kind of force the issue on the healthcare premiums, we can run on that in 26. And I think that may be successful for them. It just depends on how the public perceives all of this long term.
As far as Speaker Johnson coming out yesterday and saying we are canceling the votes that are scheduled for next week, what does that signal politically?
I think that's a signal that there's no room for negotiation on the CR. So if there was a change, let's say a kind of a renegotiated bill or resolution, that would require it then to be passed in the House. And that presents its own sort of political issues because that's a very narrow Republican majority. And there's been some issues around some of the more fiscally conservative Republicans even wanting to pass a continuing resolution. So that would complicate matters. I think that what he's saying is that we're not coming back in session, which indicates that, pass this version in the Senate or, expect another week long of shutdown. So I think that what it really is trying to do is put pressure on Senate Democrats and the Senate at large to pass what's already under consideration.
One thing that a lot of people have brought up, and I'm hoping that you can provide some clarity for folks out there, they have said, well, look, the Senate does have a majority Republican. So is there anything that Republicans can do to maybe bypass the Democrats and get something passed to reopen the government?
Well, in this situation, it requires a 60 vote majority, or a supermajority. So in this context, there's nothing that can be done without Democratic support. And as already been kind of shown in the votes, there is some Democratic support. It's notable that some of the senators in the group that has defected include senators that are from states. 2 of the 3 are from states that are considered swing states. So again, nothing can be done unilaterally. There has to be part of this kind of bipartisan effort. Now, shutdowns, even though they're decried by both parties, are really a powerful tool that is used by those who are in the minority to kind of force concessions for the majority. And so I would, look going forward, unless we can get to that 60 vote threshold, there's nothing that's going to be done.
Are we seeing these shutdowns happen more often? As you said, it's so to speak, it is an effective tool when you're talking about something like this. Are we seeing more of these shutdowns or near shutdowns than we did in decades past? Or are we just maybe hearing about it more?
No, I think it's definitely a new political phenomena that has become very regular in our just kind of political life and in the life of the Congress. One of the reasons is that it is a leverage point for those who are in the minority to force the majority to provide some sort of concessions. The other issue with it is that we exist in a political reality that's very polarized, and that's reflected in the Congress with these razor thin majorities. And so having a 60 vote agreement on something becomes more difficult when you're divided like it is today with almost evenly between Republicans and Democrats, with a couple of votes more for the Republicans, and then we have one Republican in the Senate who is voting against it. So that math becomes even harder. So one of the issues that you would see with shutdowns, I think, is just a byproduct of the political system and also that leverage that the minority party has been able to do, whether it be a Republican or a Democrat. Going forward, I would expect to see this to become a norm, although there is criticism around it and the ripple effects of it for the economy and for those who are in federal service.
What message does a shutdown like this, what we're seeing right now, what message does it send to voters and to the American public as a whole?
That's a very important point politically as well, is that a lot of people, when they view a shutdown from a political perspective, say, okay, who is to blame? Who owns the shutdown? And right now, the public opinion polls that I've seen have blame on both sides. Does that change over time? And does one party get the blame more than another? And does that become just politically unsustainable? There's also these real world ripple effects of a shutdown for those who are federal workers, those who may want to access federal services. And as that becomes more of an issue, does that also place pressure on politicians to end the shutdown? But again, one of the reasons that you see shutdowns end oftentimes is that the public opinion, which then distills into kind of political reality, is just not palatable to those who are in Congress or in the Senate. One of the things that I would note, though, as mentioned earlier, is that this is a political issue that has galvanized many people on the left of the Democratic Party. And this is a political issue also that has been a discussion point around healthcare. So that may be something that has political dividends going forward. It just remains to be seen.
And my last question for you here, where do we go from here and what do we need to be watching for over the next several days? As we know, it does appear that this is going to last at least through the weekend, possibly longer here. So what do we need to be watching for to see what happens next?
Well, I think that what will happen likely next week is some more votes. Whether or not they get to that 60 threshold, I think is questionable. There's also, I would watch and see how this is going to play out in terms of this healthcare issue that's been discussed. How does that really get resolved outside of adding that to the continuing resolution, which then would require the House to come back into session? So I would look at both of those points, and I would also see public opinion. How is public opinion shifting? Right now, we don't see the immediate impact of a shutdown. There's rumblings and there's certainly consequences, but it isn't as amplified as it will be as time goes on. And I would expect to see some pushback just in public opinion, particularly around government services and government employees who may be becoming more vocal as time goes on. I'd also look at the White House and see what they may be doing in terms of the shutdown. There's been a lot of discussion around whether or not this would be used as an opportunity to reduce the federal workforce, and whether or not that is a threat or a reality may play out next week as well.
All right. Casey Myers, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else we missed? Anything you want to add before I let you go?
Well, I think that this has become a political reality. And again, this is a short-term measure. So this may be a discussion that we're having in the not too distant future again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is very true. Thank you so much for being here. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.